Hello, thank you for tuning into my channel. We're working on a crumb quilt today, so if you want some information about the Pieces of My Heart crumb quilt, please stay tuned. I really like this crumb quilt that I want to show you how I put together. I actually recorded about half of the video, but I lost the first half on a memory card somewhere. So I'm just gonna do like a quick overview, and then hopefully you can see how the quilt top comes together. Now we start with this with the crumb quilts, and crumb blocks. I don't have a whole block, but I do have a video about crumb quilts that I'll put a link for in the description and in the cards. And what you do for crumb quilting is you take small pieces. This happens to be one of my small half square triangles. Here's some more small pieces. And then you stitch them together into bigger sections and until you get to the size you want. So here's like one little portion of one. Mine actually, I made them big enough for 10-inch squares. Okay, so think about that. That's what we're starting with, 10-inch squares. I also had some denim that I made squares from, and then just some red, a variety of red fabrics. And you'll see those the further we get into the video. So we started with those main parts. So now I want to show you the pattern that we use to create this quilt. If you follow my channel for any amount of time, hopefully you know how obsessed I am with the half square triangle. This is my favorite quilt unit. I love it because it's so versatile. You can make a lot of different designs with it, and you can, anything that you can do with a half square triangle, you can do with most different types of blocks. You just put it with another square and stitch down the middle. So these are just a few designs that I've done with my with half square triangles, and I like to draw them out on graph paper. I love the chevron, and this is a quilt that I've already made before. This is a quilt that I made. It's for my Cameron. He has this quilt. And then this is another one that I made, and I think there's a video about this quilt, about laying it out maybe. Here's another one. There were some people who wanted me to make purple quilts, and so I did. I also played around with some shadow, and I made this quilt. I call it Argyle because it uses, you use the different ways that you can blend the colors so that there's dark and light of each color. There was also white, and then there was a fabric that had all three colors in it. And I drew like little dotted lines to help figure out which color went where. I thought this one was really cool, and it turned out beautiful. The one that we're gonna do today is this quilt. This is what it started out as. Okay, and my idea was that these would be small squares. But once I had the big 10-inch squares, I decided to revamp it a little bit. So here is the pattern that we're going to work with. I'm just going to make sure that you can see it on camera. Okay, so let me zoom in just a little bit. And what I've done with this pattern to make it fit with the squares that I had, since they were big, I get to play a little bit with what part of this that I wanted to include. So I drew a line here. I hope you can see it in black pen around the design that we're going to include. This darker shade, which is here across the top and then here at the bottom, along with this area. These are all going to be background portions of the quilt, and they're going to be in the red. The center heart is going to be all crumbs, and then the, not the center, but the one in the middle will be all crumbs, and the center heart is going to be the denim fabric. And so that's what we can do as far as starting out to make the quilt. Hopefully you can see these diagonal lines. Those are what we're gonna use for the half square triangles. The ones that are light gray and white, these will be crumb and denim. And then the ones that are light gray and dark gray are going to be crumb for the light gray and then red for the dark gray. And I did make myself a chart of the number of squares. So if you're interested and you'd like to see a pattern written out, I can write it out. I have it like penciled in down here, but I would have to go back and really write everything out so that you could see it. So let me know in the comments if you're interested in seeing this turn into a pattern. All right, so the first step with this was to make my half square triangles. So let me show you how I did that. Since I've made half square triangles on camera before, I'm just going to take a quick second to go over how I did that. These are half square triangles from a project that I'm working on now, and so I'm just going to use them as an example. One of these squares would be your crumb block, and then the other square would be either the denim or the red or whatever color that you chose. So one would be the crumb and one would be a solid. And so what you'll do is you'll place those right sides together. Since they are large blocks, you definitely want to draw a line from corner to corner on one of those triangles, probably the solid, because the crumb would be really difficult to see if you drew a line across it. And then you're going to stitch on either side of that drawn line, and you can see that here. And then you're going to cut on the drawn line. So again, draw a line down the center, stitch 1/4 inch on either side of that line, and then cut down the center, and you'll get 2 half square triangles. Here's one, here's the other, and then you'll have to make your crumb and denim and crumb and red before you can even get to the next step. So let's see what's next. So after I made all my crumb blocks, I measured them, squared them up and measured them, and then I cut the other solid squares that I would need. And it's going to be important when you do that you, I would say, do the half square triangle blocks first. So all of those for me were 10 inches. And then when you get ready to cut the rest of the fabric, you can use the measurement of the half square triangles. If you make all 10-inch squares, you could do that, but you're going to end up having to square up the solid squares after you make the half square triangles. They're going to end up probably about a 1/2 inch smaller than you started with. So from that point, after you have all of your half square triangles made, and then you cut out your solid squares from your other fabrics, using your diagram, you're going to lay out the quilt in whatever area that you use. I use my living room floor. I'm going to put a picture of the quilt laid out but not sewn together. And then from that point, you'll start sewing together. I sew together by rows, and then you'll eventually have the entire thing done. Now, since I had already made a portion of this video, from this point forward, it's going to be the video that I made before, but maybe, well, I think I will show you how far I am on the quilting on this quilt, so stay tuned. Since I'm going to be sewing some crumb blocks together to each other, I wanted to show that it's really not that bad using my machine. Even though these seams are really close to the edge, I should be able to sew them with no problem. I've lined up the top of each of the blocks, and I'm just sewing using a 1/4 inch seam. If it feels a little bulky, I just slide the fabric up there. And then even if I feel like it gets, I don't know, like blocked or tangled or whatever, I just gently pull it up above at the top, and it goes through pretty easily. I'm just going to line up the bottom here right here just to make sure that they're even. And I was worried that I would have some stretching every once in a while, but so far that hasn't been an issue either. And I'm just sewing it just like two regular pieces of fabric, just sewing them together. And you can hear the machine is just kind of humming along. If there are bulky parts, again, just pull it through, it's fine. And then keeping the ends lined up here. For this quilt top, there are only a few times that I have to sew a lot of these in a row. And I think that's just the third row that has all of the crumb blocks in it. Uh-oh. And for this part, I'm just going to kind of move it over to make sure that I can keep that 1/4 inch. Gently pull. And I have one that I pieced before that. And it's 2 crumb blocks. I'll show you. You can see right here is the seam. And it looks pretty good. And then on the back, and I don't know what side I'm going to press it to, but I'm just going to set the seam, and then I'm going to make the seam go to the side that I want it to go to. Alright, so I'm going to finish up a few more rows, and then I'll show you them. Here is the first half of my quilt. This is just the rows. They're not stitched together except for the bottom 2. I had an issue where I pressed the seam allowances in the same direction, so I went ahead and sewed it so that I could manually flip them on one side. So far I like the way the crumbs look. I'm ready to finish the other almost half. This is 6 rows. There are 5 rows left, I think. So I'm going to finish those 5 rows, and then I'll show it to you before I sew the rows together. This is what the quilt top looks like with all the rows sewn together. It's getting late, so I'm going to go to bed, and I'll get up tomorrow and sew all the rows together so we can see what the final product looked like. Here is the finished quilt top. I'm so pleased with the way it turned out. I just love the crumbs, and I love the look of the heart. Everything is just gorgeous on it. I did want to remind you that after I made my half square triangles, I squared everything up so that the squares would all be the same size, and that made it easier to put together. And the best part about this is that it was all scraps. I didn't have to purchase any fabric for this. It was either gifted or I already had it in my stash. And I just think it's a beautiful quilt. I love how even the denim, you can tell that it's kind of scrappy fabrics, that they're not all exactly the same. And it's just a really beautiful overall appearance. So I've been working on quilting this quilt. It's pretty huge, as you can tell. And I'm going to go a little bit closer so you can see it. So where the pins are, those are the areas that I haven't quilted. And then here on this section of the crumbs, I've done some of the quilting. Maybe I can zoom in and you can see it. Here we go. You can see a little bit of the meander on the crumb section. And then I have, oh yeah, you can see it right there. Okay. But I still have a pretty good bit of the crumb section to complete. I have about maybe a good third of the heart to do, maybe a little bit more than that. I've also quilted the center heart. Let me back up just a little bit. But this whole thing has been quilted. I'm going to see if I can get close so you can see the quilting. I don't know how much we can zoom in. There we go. So I used a swirl pattern in the center. So But I really love this quilt. I love the way it came out. I'm excited to see what else I can do with it. The other quilting that I'll have to do in this red section. But hopefully it'll be finished pretty soon. If you have questions about this process, please leave them in the comments. Again, if you'd like to see me write out this pattern, I'd love to do that for you. So just let me know in the comments. Please thumbs up this video and share it with your friends. And subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!